Hi, welcome to Chapter 6, Module 6 on General Guidelines for Test Item Development on the EMS Testing Online Item Writing Workshop. I'm going to talk about developing an item from a learning objective, how to implement and develop a test item to target the specific level within the cognitive domain you're looking at, why we select A as the correct answer at first as we're developing the question, some rules to creating distractors, how to move the choices around to have them in the order you'd like them, how we come about rationale annotation development and editing the question as a result, and assigning a bloom level to a question. This is really the meat and potatoes of this program, so we shall begin. First off, when developing an item, always start straight from the objective. That's your base. So let's suggest that the objective is such that it says the student will be able to define shock. Great, easy question. Question, which of the following would be a definition of shock according to your text? Done. Then you would begin the issue of developing the wrong answers. That would be a cognitive question, very low level of Bloom's taxonomy, basically knowledge level. So, when developing an item, your Bloom levels, knowledge or comprehension are basically stating the facts. So, student will be able to describe the principal difference between hemorrhagic shock and hypovolemic shock. So the explanation might be in hemorrhagic shock, it's a shock involving the loss of blood, and hypovolemic shock, it's a loss of fluid. So which of the following types of shock would fit best in, or which of the following circumstances would fit best into being classified as hemorrhagic shock? A broken femur. Notice, picked A, the correct answer first. Broken femur. B, excessive sweating. C, excessive diarrhea. D, dehydration secondary to malnourishment. So the other three deal with fluid or hypovolemic shock. Only A deals with hemorrhagic shock. So that would be basically how you're going about creating a knowledge or comprehension level. In application or analysis, you have a straightforward scenario typically. So you're called into an ICU room or a med-surg room for a patient complaining of difficulty breathing. You identify these signs and symptoms, yada, yada, yada. Which of the following would best demonstrate that this patient is experiencing a tension pneumothorax? A, distended neck veins. B, C, and D, plausible choices, etc. Synthesis or evaluation questions are questions that are outside the box. So an example might be, let's say we have a trauma patient who also takes beta blockers or calcium channel blockers or something of that nature. So we're going to create a scenario. We have a patient who was brought into the emergency department, who was involved in a motor vehicle accident. Medications indicate that the patient takes, and you list, say, Coumadin and some type of ACE inhibitor and some type of beta blocker. Which of the following would be the maybe most critical assessment, or which of the following would be an expected result in this case from the patient taking the ACE inhibitor, etc. They're all critical thinking issues. You have to basically take from column A, take from column B, figure out which is relevant, which is not, and make a judgment call. So a lot more challenging questions at that level. Take a lot of time to write. Why is A always first? We always make A first off, or correct first, because we want to make sure we have at least one correct answer. Sometimes you'll write a question, and if you don't make A the correct answer, when you start writing your question or your choices, you come up with 4 really good wrong answers and no good right answer. So then you get into the game of, okay, what's the best, worst, wrong answer, or worst, best, right answer, or however you describe that. Clearly doesn't sound appropriate. So whenever you write a question, you write the answer first. That's letter A. Then you write B, C, and D, and then you mix them up. We'll talk about how you go about mixing them up shortly. Also, by writing the correct answer first, you make sure that the stem and that choice read well. So it'll make sense grammatically, it'll make sense logically, etc. Now for the distractors, again, those are the wrong answers. One thing you'll want to avoid are 3x1s or 1x3s. In other words, just an oddball out. So of your 4 choices, you don't want the correct answer to be right, but also the shortest. The other 3 wrong, but also very long in answers, or vice versa. So all of them need to share. You can have 2x2s where 2 share something in common, the other 2 share something in common, but you can't have 1x3s or 3x1s. All the wrong answers need to be plausible. That means they need to be within the realm of possibility. Which of the following would be an expected systolic blood pressure in a 7-year-old? And you might list 104, and then apple, orange, and banana would clearly be non-plausible distractors. But 3,000, 3,020, and 3,030 also would be non-plausible distractors, even though they are numbers. So they need to be within the realm of possibility. We also want to make sure that the stem and all of the choices, distractor and key, match up properly grammatically. So which of the following is? Well, if it's an is, we're expecting a one-answer deal. If the only one-answer deal is the correct answer and the other B, C, and D are double answers, or double choices, in other words, this and this, then grammatically that should be an are and not an is. So now you know the correct answer because you know grammar. So we want to make sure we avoid that. Again, length, you want to make sure that one is not super long and the other 3 short, or vice versa. Make sure they're all about the same length. You want to, if appropriate, avoid absolutes. There are a few absolutes in medicine, but not many, so you want to avoid those always and nevers. And a great place to look for distractors is common misconceptions. So, for example, which of the following might be the definition of shock, and you might use things that the common person might understand as shock, like receiving a shock from static electricity, or being shocked as in like being scared. Then, once you've created all these and selected them, now you want to arrange the choices so that A isn't always the right answer. You can do that numerically from shortest to longest, longest to shortest. So if there are numbers, you can arrange them in order of size. If they're alphabetical, again, from A to Z or Z to A, those are usually the one-word choices. Or by length of the answers, and usually from shortest to longest or longest to shortest. That'll be the nicest on the eyes of the dyslexics. Then you're going to write your annotation rationale. So you're going to create your annotation rationale, your explanation of why right is right and wrong is wrong. And as you do this, you often find that you need to edit your question and or edit your answers. So you edit your question and or answers. Then you go look at your rationale and notice that you have to edit it. And then that maybe makes you edit your questions and answers again. And then you're finally done editing and creating the question and you think you're happy with it. Then you're going to assign a Bloom level. It's easy if you went straight from the objective, because whatever the objective's Bloom level is will hopefully be the objective of your question. You might write one lower than what the objective is. So you might have written a definition just because you felt one was lacking and needed one for them to be able to then answer the higher Bloom level pertinent to that objective. And when creating these Bloom levels, remember close is good enough, so you don't have to be exact. Don't take forever. If you think it's application but might be analysis, pick one and move on. So in summary, we've talked about the importance of using the objective and the level of the objective to create our question. Then how to go about working with the choices or answers, create the annotation and rationale, edit the question and answers, and then assign the Bloom level. So I hope you've enjoyed this chapter, chapter 6. Next, we'll move on to chapter 7, which will be further delving into item development involving cut scores. So again, as always, if you have any suggestions to improve this program, please let us know. Otherwise, thank you for your time.